Hi, I'm Josh McGrath,
I'm Andrew Haas.
and this is The Ardent Pursuit. Welcome back to episode 2. In our first episode, we talked about the reasons behind starting this podcast, which obviously included us building a beautiful studio, and that would then necessitate a need to have a podcast. But beyond that, there were 2 other reasons. Number 1 was the increased rate of single men in our culture. We touched on that 63% number from the Pew Research done last year, as well as a concerning lack of purpose really plaguing American men. And so if you didn't listen to that, we encourage you to go back and listen to that. That will kind of set the stage for what we're doing here. And really, our heart is to equip that 63% number, single men in America, to be able to pursue romantic interests that lead towards fruitful marriage. We want to be able to provide practical tools and resources. And so today we're really starting kind of on that journey. We'll get into the practical episodes in coming weeks. But today we're going to kind of build off of this idea of purpose and explore the topic of vision. So let's dive in today with this.
Yeah.
Andrew, it's not a surprise to you, to me, to most people that I think humanity in general struggles to have a vision, but I think men, even more so than women, really struggle to have vision.
And I would say that society as a whole struggles more with men who lack vision than, say, women who lack vision.
It's true. We talked about last episode how, culture really has identified a problem, toxic masculinity. And really, toxic masculinity, when you zoom out even more, is a result of a lack of vision. It's what happens when there is no vision. Proverbs talks about how where there's no vision, the people perish. And I think our culture is beginning to realize that men, when they don't have a vision, they do perish, and the end consequences truly are toxic, or as we discussed last time, they're sinful.
Yeah, and I would add to that and say it's either a lack of vision or a primarily self-centered vision. Because honestly, toxic masculinity, that comes about when men are self-centered and pursue things primarily for their own gain.
And let's be honest, humanity's selfish, but men have a way of taking that to the next level.
Yes, we do.
We are an incredibly selfish breed.
We are.
As we discussed in the last episode, men are the solution, and they're also the problem. So I mean, that's kind of the thing we're examining here, is the fact that for men, there is a lack of vision, or there's misplaced vision.
Right.
Vision that is extremely self-centered and self-focused.
Yeah.
Women historically are not attracted to visionless men. The guy who lives in his parents' basement, eating cardboard pizza, playing, video games 19 hours a day. To my knowledge, there's not a line of women outside the basement door knocking on it, wanting to date or marry him. Why?
Not a coincidence.
Yes, exactly. Causation, yes. What we're really talking about here is the fact that men need to have vision. But when you begin to talk about vision, it can become very intellectual. It can become very ethereal.
Yeah, and a lot of guys, for a lot of guys, it's not even on their radar. If you were to ask me as a college student years ago at this point, if someone were to just ask me, hey, do you have a vision for your life? Or, hey, what's your vision for your life? I would not have had an answer. I don't know that I would have been able to even understand the question. Like, what do you mean by that?
It's interesting because I think one of the things that modern first world culture has offered and provided, particularly for men, is the ability to just kind of exist without direction. It's easy to just go to your job and just do that. It's easy to, spend money on things and accumulate, interesting items. It's easy to go on trips and see the world. It's easy to go out to dinner with your friends. And what can very easily happen is you end up getting into this pattern of just existing You just go to your job, you do the same thing, you have your friends group, you go on vacations, and 5 years passes, and then 10 years pass, and then 20 years pass, and you're still going to your job, going on vacation, hanging out with a friends group. And there's no direction. And so what ends up happening is you feel very purposeless. And then you begin to see the numbers that we talked about, the statistics we talked about in the last episode of, alcoholism, drug addiction, suicide, things like that, mental health, loneliness. We see an increase among men in America with that. And I think that really points to not just a lack of purpose, but a lack of vision, because they're just existing. There's no vision requires direction.
Yes. And in fact, one way to describe a vision is to say, what direction am I headed? If you were to ask a guy, hey, what's the vision for your life? Another way to ask that question is, you could say, hey, what's the best version of your future self? Men should be able to articulate what that is.
Or where do you see your future self? Not just the best version, because the best version of yourself could be very self-centered. It could be a future where it's only you, and you look amazing. You're making 6 figures a year. Everyone loves you. You're the male equivalent of Taylor Swift. It's like awesome, right? Good for you. But
yes. Well, a telltale sign of a successful man are the people around him are better off. So I think that's a good distinction. The ideal version of your future self should be evident by those around you are also better off. And if they're not, that points to a self-centered or primarily a self-motivated vision.
It's true. Now, I think about that 63% number that, we'll probably reference quite a bit throughout this podcast. But 63% of the men in America aged 18 to 30 are single. We started this podcast to help equip them to be able to pursue romantic interests that lead towards fruitful marriage. But you've got to have a vision for marriage before you can even want to start to pursue a relationship. Because guess what women don't want? They don't want a visionless relationship. By and large, women don't want to date perpetually until they're dead. They want it to go somewhere. They want there to be purpose. They want men to help drive the relationship. I've actually talked to several women recently where I was just asking them questions about men in relationships. And one of the funny things that they talk about all the time is I wish he would initiate, or I wish he would just figure out what to do. Oh, I wish he'd pick a restaurant. Oh, I wish he'd figure out what we're going to do on this date. But men need to have a vision to even enter into a relationship. And so when I think about vision in terms of the men that we really want to equip and reach, I think about, wow, we've got to break down the concept of what is the purpose of vision and how does one build a vision so that 5, 10, 20, 30 years don't just pass and you're just existing still in your current state.
Yeah, a vision for a guy who's particularly interested in a relationship should include something that's well articulated beyond getting into a relationship. Meaning, at the beginning, before you're in a relationship, a guy should be able to articulate why they want to enter a relationship and what the path is after that point. A lot of guys will want to get into a relationship, and they will find a partner, and then it's like, okay, now what? And a lot of guys they have to figure out, okay, what's next? Ideally, you'll have figured out ahead of time, I want my life to go here, and this is why. And you'll have at least some idea of what's going to happen from that point on.
One of the things I think about with vision is the fact that because it does provide direction, when I think about direction, I think about journeys. When I think about journeys, I think about travel. You and I have traveled a bunch together over the years. And part of travel is you have to know where you're going to know how to get there. If I pulled up to your house tomorrow and I was like, hey, Andrew, get in the car, we're going. What would you ask?
Where to?
Yes, going where? And if I said to you, well, just pack your bags, you're going to be like,
what am I going to pack?
Exactly. Like without knowing where the destination is, it's really hard to know what the journey is going to be. And I think in terms of like marriage, right? Okay, so if a man has a vision for marriage, it's kind of like this coffee cup here. It's located here, and he's here. Now, he's got a vision for this, but there are a bunch of steps along that journey. Just as if I said to you, Andrew, let's drive down to Disneyland. Right? There's a lot of different places we're going to go. There's tolls, there's stops, there's getting gas along the way. There's a lot of different elements that we're going to have to work through before we arrive there. Same thing when you're trying to pursue a relationship that's going to lead towards marriage. There's going to be like certain things about having a vision. There's going to be things like being self-disciplined. There's going to be things like having a job. There's going to be things like being mature. There's going to be things like being responsible. There's all these different elements along the way. But when you have a vision for something bigger than you, for something that's down the road, for a future state, what that does is that begins to provide direction as far as what am I doing today and why am I doing it today? Why am I saving today? Is it just so I have a lot of money down the road, or is there purpose behind it? Why am I exercising and being healthy? Is it just so I look sexy and can get a girl? Or is it so that I'm healthy so that I can be a good father and a good husband? Why am I being responsible today? Is it because someone told me I need to be responsible and that's just a cultural expectation? Or is that because you have to be responsible in order to be a husband and a father? And so having a vision really actually does not only provide a lot of purpose for a man, but it actually provides a lot of clarity as far as what are the steps that I should be doing versus just the existence of a life living perpetually from day to day to day to day.
And a quick side note, to being in a relationship, a lot of guys will pursue a relationship to that end, and women become the destination. I want to make her happy. I want to be with her, and a lot of their energy goes toward her.
Yep.
And that's actually pretty tiring for a lot of women. Over the long haul, meaning the woman is not the goal or the end result. You pursue a woman for ultimately something bigger.
Yeah, but she doesn't want to be the destination.
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit more practically about vision then. So how, you're a husband, you're a father. You've got 6 kids, 1 on the way. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Due any day.
Almost 7.
Almost 7. Wow, big stuff.
6.95.
Crazy. So between the two of us, we have almost 7 kids. Crazy. Wow,
We do.
What a world. Who would have thought about that back in college? But all right, so you're a father, you're a husband. How important is vision in your marriage? How important is vision in your family?
Vision provides structure and helps clarify what the boundaries should be. As a husband, as a dad, pursuing, business ventures, it's, having vision really helps take you along a path that ultimately is going to be, it's going to allow those around me to be better off.
I love the idea of it helps to provide boundaries, because men, we hate boundaries. We hate being told no. We hate being submitted. We hate being under authority. And so the idea of boundaries, like inherently, maybe it's just the sin nature, is like, oh, gross, terrible. I'm an adult, I'm a man, I can do what I want. But you're right, vision really does provide safety and boundaries as far as knowing what we can and cannot do and how and in what ways we should operate.
Right, what you should say no to. The thing is, for 100 things that you or I could say yes to, realistically, probably 80 or 90 of them, you should say no to them. But it's hard to know what to say no to if you don't know what you're working toward.
Yeah. It's funny because I think about I've had conversations with a lot of, single men over the years, guys who, are in relationships or want to be in relationships, guys who are in relationships and want to be married, or guys who are not in relationships and want to be married. And I've definitely seen before in instances where guys will talk about how, well, once they're married, they'll do X, Y, Z. And it's funny because when it comes to vision, again, going back to that, Proverbs 29 verse, if you don't have vision, the people perish. Marriage is the wrong time to begin to practice having a vision.
Yeah, it's not too late at that point.
Not
but
too late.
It's
No.
almost too late.
Not too late. Definitely not. But that's the wrong place to be like, I'm going to wait. I'm going to delay having a vision. You want to prepare for marriage. You want to prepare for a relationship. Are you single right now? Have a vision.
Yeah.
Because a vision isn't specific to, well, when I'm married, I'll have vision. As a single person, particularly as a man, you should have vision right now for your life.
And something you touched on last episode about toxic masculinity, men can have a vision toward their own fulfillment and toward their own benefit.
Yep.
And one of the results of that is going to be toxic masculinity. Masculinity in a healthy form is going to be when men pursue something bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
And that should be a telltale sign of all men. We should be pursuing something that, sure, we might benefit, but also those around us should benefit.
So vision can take on obviously many forms, and we could try to get into the nuances of defining, the lines of, well, this is a vision, whereas this is a plan, and you can get stuck in the weeds of all of that. I think for what we're talking about, what we want to encourage men to do is to just have a vision that's bigger than themselves, and to have a vision that is not self-focused or self-centered, but is actually on the benefit of other people, that benefits other people around them. Whether it's towards a marriage, whether it's towards a business, whether it's towards a community, whether it's towards a local church. Because when men apply their masculinity in an environment where there's vision to benefit other people, you actually get the best traits of masculinity at that moment, like you talked about. And I think about a story, we've got some friends who this past summer, the dad, he's got 6 kids. The dad came home early summer and he just felt like the Lord had given him a vision for his family for that summer. And he typed it out, printed it out, put it on the fridge, and had to sit down with the family and cast vision for it. But it was see a need, fill a need. And that was the summer vision. And I love that because while on its face, someone could read that and think, oh, that's really simple, see a need, fill a need. It actually provided so much direction for the family because the vision he cast was, look, if we see a need within our family unit, we're going to fill it. But as a family, if we see a need outside of our home, we're going to fill it. That is the thing we're called to this summer, and it was a summer vision. It wasn't a 6-year, 60-year lifetime vision. It was a temporary vision that he felt called to. But what it did is it gave direction and then ultimately purpose to the whole family for the summer.
And it was open-ended. And I think that was part of the what makes a good vision is that there is no defined endpoint.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, is there a need? Well, let's meet that need.
Yeah. And I love that. And so for men, one of the things that is so important for them to have is to have a vision to ask, why am I doing X, Y, Z? Like, why do I have the job that I have? Is it just because I need money to exist? Or is there a purpose behind this, a vision to either reach my coworkers for Jesus or to climb the corporate ladder or to make money? And if it is making money, the question is, why am I making money? Is there a vision behind making more money? Is it to benefit the culture and the world and around me, to be able to be a giver, to be a blessing, to be generous? Or is it so that I can build my wealth and show off my new car, my amazing home?
If your vision is to die with a pile of money, I say we should have rewritten your vision.
And Scrooge would have something to say about that. I believe there's an entire book and musical about this. But you're 100% correct. And so for men, one of the things that we're going to encourage them to do is to have a vision that's bigger than themselves and that is not self-focused or self-centered. Because while the world will define success in terms of material gain, really what we want to encourage men to do is to be fruitful in their vision. Now, fruitfulness may result in material gain.
Sure. Yeah.
Awesome if it does. But really what we want to do is we want to encourage them to say, hey, Have a vision that is bigger than you and know why you're doing what you're doing. Why do you have the job that you have? Why do you live where you are? Why are you invested in the things you're invested in? Um, we'll get into this in future weeks, but like even things like with relationships, romantic relationships, why do you want to be in a romantic relationship? Why do you want to pursue a woman?
Yes. Why do you want to pursue a specific woman?
Exactly. And that all requires vision. Without vision, the people perish. One of the things I think about in terms of all of this, you and I come from a Christian, faith ethic. And I know that not all of our viewers may. Some of them may come from different faiths or no faith at all. But for us, one of the things that we recognize is the fact that, in Genesis chapter 1, God lays out the dominion mandate. To have dominion over the garden. And then he expands that mandate with being fruitful and to be fruitful and multiply. And there has to be vision behind that in order for Adam and Eve to accomplish it. If you have no vision for the garden, or if you have a self-centered vision, what can I get from the garden? What happens to the garden? It dies. If your vision is, well, I don't want to be inconvenienced, so I'm not going to be fruitful and multiply, guess what happens to humanity? They die. And so there really had to be a vision for Adam and Eve to accomplish the dominion mandate of tending to the garden and keeping it, as well as being fruitful and to multiply. And for believers particularly, it is so important that they have vision that is hopefully, that vision is influenced and shaped by things like the Bible. Pastors, mentors, through prayer, the Holy Spirit, because they should not, men and women, but we're talking to men here, Christian men should not be creating a vision apart from biblical counsel and wisdom.
Yeah, a guy who crafts a vision on his own likely will not craft a good vision. It's just really hard to know on your own how to best allocate your time, energy, and resources. A good vision will include input from the people that you respect around you, who know where you are in life, know your talents, know your skills, know what you want to do, where you want to go. Those are all necessary components, but yeah, a guy who crafts a vision for his life in isolation is not going to have, generally speaking, a good vision. Men should include other men in their life when they're thinking about, okay, what should my vision for my life be? What should I do? Where should I go?
100%. Because, again, we already touched on this, men are incredibly selfish.
Yes, we are.
And so in isolation, in a vacuum, guess what my vision will likely result in? Self-centeredness. And so masculinity is best served when it's selfless.
Yep.
And so your vision really does need the input of others, of outside voices, to make sure that it isn't geared towards a self-centered outcome. Now, real quick here, let's talk about vision as far as short-term and long-term. Because you can have vision that is long-term, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, end of life goal. And then you can have vision that's very short-term. And I think it's important to recognize that both of those are valid, and men particularly do need both.
You need both, but you should start with the 10, 20, 30-year vision. You should start there, and you may not really understand, okay, what's my life in 30 years? Yeah, that's hard to know. Who should I be in 30 years? Those can be really hard questions to answer.
Yeah.
But at least try to answer them. And from that, you can backtrack to a vision for the next year, the next month.
Yep.
You could have a vision for a vacation. You're going on a week-long vacation?
Sure.
There could be a vision for the vacation.
Yeah.
But the vision you have for, say, a vacation will line up with the vision you have for 5 years, 10 years down the road. They should be they should be able to be in sync. There shouldn't be any disconnect between what I do in the next month or the next week. That should be right in line with who I want to be a year from now.
Or where I want my family to be from a year now, or where I want my business to be from a year from now, or my community to be, from a year from now. That's a really good point. And so, as we look to wrap up, today's episode, one of the things that we want to encourage you men to do is to sit down with, a pastor, a mentor, a friend, a counselor, and really craft for yourself a 10, 20, 30-year vision of where you want your life to be, and to articulate in written form what that includes. What does that look like? Because that is actually going to provide you, kind of going back to our Disneyland analogy, the destination will help you know kind of the journey that you're going to take to get there. Second thing we want you to do this week is to actually apply yourself in a very small, temporary vision environment. So, whether that's, doing the dishes this week, every single day, not going to bed until the dishes are done, or I don't know, making your bed every single morning, or getting up at a certain time every single day. For the next week, commit yourself, have a vision for something and commit yourself to that and accomplish that every single day. So that wraps up our time together. We're excited that you were with us today, and we look forward to having you join us in our next episode.